Alright, anyway, that was weird. So, my laptop that I'm using this for currently is without a battery, so I need to be careful to not unplug it while I'm doing this. Alright, so I had quite a bit of mail, but some of it came in a little late as a consequence of the hurricane. Because some of this stuff was actually ordered from before then, and I'm assuming it just got held up at the post office and whatnot as a consequence. Some people even offered me refunds, and I just told them to wait a little bit because we weren't really sure what was going on, and then it was difficult to communicate in general. Like even the past few days, my internet has been going in and out, so that's the thing. And I think that's actually more due to the fact that like there are still people like not that much in my surrounding area, but there are people who still do not have power in uh, some areas, and to fix that, to fix internet connections, to fix cable connections, some of our stuff had to be shut off for a period of time. Like, I did get a text message warning me about intermittence. Sorry, intermittent power issues. Um, but really, all it resulted in was like our lights flickering a little bit, at least so far. But uh, that out of the way, I did order quite a few things. It's not literally everything that I have on this desk here. I just have a lot of things here because I thought I might want to talk about a few things. This was this is just old. There are cards in here that I never sleeved up, so I'm going to do that. I guess we'll start off with this. So I built Valios for V Premium, and I'm going to be sleeving that today. And I guess while I sleeve that, I hope this is actually 50 sleeves. I'm pretty sure I counted them beforehand. Um, I kind of wanted to just talk about some things that have been on my mind lately as far as card games go. Is that on the outside? Oh. All right, so ban list. So I think I've spoken about this before on Twitch, but Ravad for that would be gone for sure by now. And I just I think ban lists serve at minimum two purposes, right? The first one would honestly be pushing new sets and stuff. Like I guess in games that have multiple formats, that's not necessarily as big of an issue because, of course, standard would rotate like every 3 months for most games. Some would be a little bit longer than that. Um, and then what? Got standard. I guess whatever your equivalent of like modern and historic would be, because I guess using Magic as an example is probably the best or the simplest way I can go about this. And that's all fine and good, right? But even then, within each format, I think it's important to have a ban list because, like, in terms of playing casually, like if I was playing casually with someone right now, um, regardless of if it was Vanguard, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, whatever, I could totally play against somebody with a premium or V premium deck that is using an overdress deck. And like under normal circumstances, if you were playing like in a given format with like a given rule set. Like if you wanted to play premium against an overdress deck, right? You'd effectively be playing under the premium rule set. So you wouldn't actually be able to use the ride deck. But if you're casually playing amongst friends, it's not necessarily that big of a deal. Uh, the only thing you'd really have to be concerned about is the power disparity between the two decks, if there is one at all, right? Um, Wait, why did I order it like that? I mean, I'm gonna shuffle this thing a little bit. It should be the other way around. So like I'm saying that more to just be like the casual play is not necessarily something that I'm considering here. But like, so ban lists, I think, do exist to kind of push new sets. So if a set were to drop today in any given card game, like whatever it is you have on your mind, and all of the cards in that set were weaker than pre-existing options, and they weren't even like worthwhile side grades for any reason, that set wouldn't sell that well, right? So you have situations like, let's say Yu-Gi-Oh! Going from the Synchro era to the Xyz era, there were a lot of key Synchro materials that were hit, right? And while I still kind of feel like they went a little overboard, it makes sense in trying to push new product, but also to ensure or attempt to ensure a relatively healthy game environment. Um, yeah, I guess that's the main takeaway from that because some of the cards that got hit definitely deserve to get hit. I'd actually have to look at the list right now to remember what exactly it was that I thought was a bit excessive. Because I am definitely having difficulty recalling that right now. But I just wanted to bring that up because it's like when it comes into consideration for actually I cannot see chat now that I think about it. So when it comes into consideration for like general discussion, I think it's something that people often gloss over that like at the end of the day, they still need to push product because like if the product isn't selling, if stores aren't able to push product, they're going to buy less product in the future potentially, which can hurt your scene, right? It can hurt your ability to consistently play and uh, buy into the decks that you would like to play. And it's like it's fine for there to be like tier one decks, right? Like if there's a single tier one deck, if there are a couple tier one decks, I kind of don't like using numbers with tiers. I honestly prefer to use letters just because it's like I feel like genuinely sometimes there are decks that you put both in tier one, right? But one of those decks out of two would definitely be a bit more rounded than the other. Like both of them are definitely like let's say S tier in overall quality, but one of the decks just has perhaps a bit better of a matchup against everything else in the meta. Or it might be something like Salamangreat, which it just it generally is a well-rounded deck. Like, would you qualify Salamangreat as mid-range? I'm not too sure, but um, Salad is definitely a Salad is definitely a like very rounded, very solid deck. I'm honestly surprised that it ever dropped off at any point. But even with that, it's like it's not broken, right? It's not overbearing. It's not like you have no counterplay for the things that they do. It's not like they are going to just completely overwhelm you out of the gate. And of course, you could end up in a situation where you have to break their board or something, but that's not always going to be the case. Oh, and like with this card, also, because I only started Vanguard this year, and I did look into getting some upgrades for some of these decks so I could play them in premium, like strides, G-guards, and whatever. Bit of a tangent. And maybe I'm dumb, but Metla just seems like an objectively better version of this. Like, well, in some capacities, because well, no, I can't really think of a reason that Metla would be worse. Like, you can ride this and filter a card, which is nice, but the thing with Medley is not only does she have a blue wave name, she can attack from the back row like regardless, I believe, just because like that's her effect, right? So yeah. Oh wow, I actually put Galliot. Did I think Galliot was a G2? What the hell? Okay, that's interesting. I don't like Galliot. But yeah, going back to the ban list thing. I do think that like when it comes to ban list, a lot of the time there are things on the lists that don't necessarily need to be there and overstay their welcome. And I guess Yu-Gi-Oh is probably a really good example of this, and it's the one I'm the most familiar with because I remember Stratos was hero structure deck, which was really weird to me because Japan had already had some results with it, right? And I believe our list had split at that point already, and it was it was clear that like Stratos was a nice card to have, but it wasn't the key component. And then more so now, of course, where you're mainly concerned with using Shadow Mist and Ryon in some capacity. But then there are things that are on the list that I don't really think need to be on the list. Um, like when Duel Masters came out in the West, I played that game quite a bit. And honestly, I wish it never got canned because I'd still be playing it to this day. I actually think I have some of the cards directly behind how I'm sitting, or like technically it's an R8. But while I don't think we ended up having much in the way of restrictions on the Western side of things, I did continue to follow Duel Masters on and off. Honestly, I still kind of follow it on and off. And I very much liked the idea that they had going on where cards were like choice restricted, or at least that's the term that Vanguard uses. I'm not too sure off the top of my head what Duel Masters uses. Because then we can in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like fucking Tyrant Neptune is banned because of an interaction with Nightingale, right? And it's like the Tyrant Neptune itself isn't much of a problem card, so people don't really care about it. But if you just choice restricted them where you can't run them in the same deck, then it wouldn't even be like a problem. Like it wouldn't have to be banned. If somebody wanted to do something goofy and just run the fucking thing, they could. And I mean, you can definitely argue that okay, Neptune being banned is the same end result. People can still play Lureless, and our dude isn't getting abused. But you know, I feel like it's somewhat unnecessarily restrictive and a bit of bloat, honestly. What is with these trees? It's like dust got in them or on them in that case, I guess. I need a bit more outer sleeves and some standard size card sleeves because I picked up some Digimon stuff as well. So it's not easy to see that I have it on my desk currently. So I need to take the first Vanguard out. This stuff is really easy. This is nice. Um, so where was I going with the ban stuff? Oh yeah, yeah. So like, I really do think a lot of games could benefit from having choice restricts rather than banning a lot of stuff. Yu-Gi-Oh is definitely still a game that is very much in need of erratas for various cards. And I think that's just going to be an issue we have to live with for a while because, like, what can you really do about the fact that, like, during Link format, or Master Rule 4 rather, I shouldn't call it Link format, during Master Rule 4, one of the biggest issues that existed, and I feel like I probably am keenly aware of this, like, a little bit more than your average person because, oh, rather, I should say what it is exactly. So, during Master Rule 4, there are a lot of decks that just could not function because of the added extra deck restriction. And even when more and more Link monsters were added, it wasn't necessarily enough because you ended up in a situation where, okay, yeah, now we have a decent amount of links. Quite a few of them are generic, they're very accessible, but you have to think about the fact that, okay, even if I don't need this link for anything other than its arrows, do its arrows work for what I need to do, right? And then, of course, you end up in a situation where Dragon Link is a thing and it's outclassing so many of these other decks. Like, the fact that it outclasses them isn't necessarily a problem itself, but like the margin by which it did showed the disparity in terms of like, okay, dragons have all these links that might have some very specific use, like immunity or spheres. Like they have a clearly intended way that they were meant to be used or whatever, but they can potentially function outside of that or go beyond their intended uh, capacity in some way, shape, or form. And this is probably not enough, so I will do a little bit more. But yeah, like um, some of these cards clearly went beyond their intended capacity. Uh, I mean, could go beyond their intended usage capacity, which is fine and all, but you still end up in a situation where like it's clear that this rule change that has like directly affected how mechanics. Well, I want to say directly affected how mechanics function, but it's like you added a restriction to all the previous summon mechanics that gate them behind the most recent, right? And the most recent one is the easiest to perform, the most accessible, and by that notion, it kind of just inherently, as a mechanic, power preps older summoners. Because like with the Synchro, you need a tuner and a non-tuner monster at minimum that add up to a specific level, right? Now, Xyz are a little bit easier because you only need two monsters of the same level, and there are quite a few cards that can just pull something of the same level out of either your hand or your deck, and there are even quite a few cards that do a little bit of level modulation, right? So it's like relatively easy to achieve. Pendulum is something that I continue to refer to as Madolche without needing the field spell to take it, which is excessive, but excessive on my part. But like I played against Madolche a lot because one of my friends that routinely went to regionals and YCSs and stuff always played Madolche anytime it was decent and legal. Well, I say decent and legal, but like it was decent due to like what was legal is what I should be saying. And wait, that is not a great opener, but thank God you can mold him in this game. Anyway. But yeah, he would play Madolche under any circumstance that he was able, and he did pretty well. I play test against him a lot with various different decks on Sims and in real life, and then sometimes we would just play like more casual fun stuff. But after having played against Madolche for so long, I can't help but see Penguins as anything but like Madolche on steroids and how they refer themselves. And that mechanic was like very strong for sure, and to like honestly, I still think it's pretty strong. And is likely why we have gotten very little Penguin support since then. But um, like that's probably the sole mechanic that I think keeping the master for restriction on like being able to pull the Penguins out of the extra deck is okay because it needed like I felt like it needed some kind of restriction way before that. But then also one of my favorite decks to play in Yu-Gi-Oh to this day is the Supreme King Dragon deck, which I think unfortunately I can't actually legally play right now. Well, not the way I want to because Criminal Magicians are mostly there, mostly okay, but I am definitely lacking um, access to the fusion, I believe. Also because of Night and Gale. Well, I think there might have been something else that abused the fusion that I'm blanking on. But I could be wrong. I'll have to check the balance. It has been a good minute since I looked at that. Because I was building it and then I just stopped because it got hit. I think that was the only card I was missing. Yes. let me actually check. I would show me looking at the ban list, but I would have to add a display capture for that in this particular scene. So yeah, Supreme King Dragonstar and Venom is still banned. So like even stuff like this, I am kind of like I'm not locked out of playing the deck completely, right? But I can't use one of the cards that I would like to be using. Not because that card itself is necessarily super broken, but because a particular interaction it has is. And instead of like just again restricting those cards from being used in the same deck, Venom gets banned because it's the lesser of two evils, and you don't have to worry about other similar interactions popping up later when more cards like Nightingale are printed. I feel like we don't really get an excess effects that are just like really abusable like that, so the choice restrictions still do the job, but we are not the ones in the agency. We can only at least make some. Okay, so yes, Memento defeat. Uh, oh, actually, that should be it. Or no, this is definitely not. That is just a bunch of cards. Where did I put the? Oh, I excuse me. My allergies have been a little bit worse since the Christmas. Excuse me. My allergies have been a little bit worse ever since the hurricane. Okay, so I'm gonna have to make a lot of adjustments here, probably. Uh, I dropped some clothes. Hopefully, none of them slid under his desk. Okay, they didn't. Now I have to sort them again, though, and I don't remember what is what. Okay, anyway. I believe I organized these by levels, so right. Got our three drumroll, got our three more Ecclesia. Um, all right, so yeah, I keep going on tangents, but yeah, so like ban list stuff. Um, and yeah, like so I'm here openly admitting that there might not necessarily be an objective best answer. Is just I still do think that choice restrict could help a lot because Yu-Gi-Oh's ban list I think for quite some time has been very bloated, unnecessarily so. Like there is just, in my opinion, what the fuck? I oh, okay. There's just been like, in my opinion, a large amount of I think there's legitimately a large amount of cars that don't really need to be on the ban list right now, and some of them are just like they're fine to come off as is. They're just not strong enough to warrant um, being on the list, and they don't heavily synergize with too much of anything to present too much of a real threat, right? That's fine. That's fine. I wonder why they did this. Well, that's interesting. The inside of the sleeve is black, but the back is in green. I wonder what brand this is. I would like to get some of these. Yeah, I really don't know why they did this. This is like actually difficult to take off. That's annoying. Okay, well, I'll deal with it. So that's three musicians. And the next two, I'll put there. And then the next two should be these. Did I order three of these? I guess I must have just to be safe. It's kind of fucked up that I put the Tyler's mail there when I actually opened all the mail beforehand. But you get what you get, or you get what you pay for, and you didn't pay for shit. So this is what you deal with. This is what you deal with. And in this moment, I realized I did not buy Dark World Deal. But that's probably because I have good patience. I mean, decent throws. Anyway, I need outers for these because these are extremely thin. I ordered these years ago. I don't think they are official though, but they look nice. Alright, so that should be the rest of the trucks. Why did I put a credit card in here? Okay. Yeah, I went off topic a little bit again. So we're good on monsters. Those were supposed to be dealings. Why did I have this upside down? Like, I know that was supposed to represent something, but I don't know what. I think it was just supposed to represent me changing the extra deck totally. I mean, not the extra deck, like the rest of my spelling trap lines. Because I have two air rock sunrises. The one call by I'm allowed to run three of the field, three of the trap, and that's entirely unnecessary. I'll have to look through all my cards to fix this later. Extra deck wise, I have some extra. Well, I have extra table stuff right there just because. Uh, I don't know why actually. I think somebody gave me the truth. Oops. Oh yeah, yeah, because this is the extra deck I normally fuck around with. Okay. So, because I can play all of these, it just was like I'm not sure why I have that. So, those four. This is the Sherman Jump one. Yep. MP17. I don't remember which set that is. That's like blind. This was yeah. I don't remember the name of this set. I know this is a reprint. Enderith is actually pretty good. Even if you don't get the draw of it, it's really nice. I really should have gotten a copy of Pest 4 because it can just jack an opponent's launch. But there's like a lot of stuff that can't be targeted still. I mean, I guess even then, there are some threats. There are enough threats that can be targeted that it's decent. It's just like useless if you try to like if you go into it and then you like synchro it off for this dude, right? It's useless against it. But granted, you're going to only want to do it when you get one of them, so chain over that. Actually, do they chain block? I can't remember. I don't know what Castor's wording is. Ah, yes. The man who probably deserves a retrain. Truly, he escaped it. This is pretty thin. Okay, you know what? I'll put them in. And then I have a copy of Raven because, yeah, I don't know. I'm between. Oh, that sleeve is fucking huge. Okay, we're not doing that. Can't get it. Alright. Bunch of old stuff. Well, I guess these are cards that I took out. One for one I definitely don't need in my Pokemon. Dandelion is banned, I think, right? Is it actually gonna be easier to refuse from the top? Why am I awful? What is wrong with me? That shouldn't have. Okay, whatever. Whatever. I am just garbage. Anyway, what the hell did I want to talk about? Stress restricts, blah blah blah. Oh yeah, yeah. So like, I don't know why, but it always seems like when Banda's discussion comes up, like people fail to acknowledge that the marketing thing is definitely an aspect of it, but like even though that's an aspect, I feel like the biggest issue with it is the fact that we have situations like needle fiber or firewall. Like literally everything around firewall got hit before firewall got hit. Granted, we still had other issues that were going to exist after firewall, right? But they beat around the bush for so long that people kind of didn't even take the time to look into what those would be. So it's like anytime I feel like anytime you hit something that's like legitimately game warping in some capacity, and I honestly feel like Firewall. So there's some associates to a degree as well, but she just kind of built into the whole overall big problem we had at the time. Um, Something's gonna replace it in some capacity, and you should be aware of what that was or what that is or might be going into the next rotation to maybe preemptively hit some things, right? And the weird thing about the firewall situation is, I very distinctly remember some people talking about how Bumblr hand looping was gonna be the next thing, and it ended up being that. And I was just like, what the fuck? I was more like, what the fuck, because I was surprised no one had really delved that far into doing that before, at least in the CCG, because it seems like that's one of the main things people love doing here, hand looping you. Okay. Um, those are my Gizmex. These are gifts. Those are baseball cards. Those are my other two cards. Alright. That answers where the other reckless lead. Ah, yes. Reinforcements of the army. I paid 15 apiece for these things. I'm surprised I still have these. I got them when they were released. That was almost a decade ago. Maybe it was a decade ago. That was quite some time. Okay, so what do we have? We need to receive. Do I have? I do actually. Let's see what we have. Receive options. Okay, that is a clear map. That is also a clear map. That is like an introductory guide. We have blackout sleeve. We have EPA sleeve. There's more EPA sleeve. We have blackout sleeve. Then we have Orcus. Oh, I forgot I have these for standard size, so I can actually make the deck. Well, not right now. I can't do it with Digimon because I don't actually have everything I need for it. So these can go in here. Question is, do I want to use the white ones or the black? I feel like this is a stereotypical thing I should be doing. So let's go with the white ones. Hopefully I have enough for it. Because I know I did use a few of these to send cards to from this line. Alright, we have enough. That's nice. Yeah, rambling. I was rambling about this. What the fuck did I want to say? Where the fuck did I want to go? Oh yeah, yeah. So like, the other thing is, the other thing, well, one more thing is, people get really upset sometimes when there are no changes, and it's definitely case to case warranted, right? But like where Yu-Gi-Oh is right now, I think if we were to get a ban list that was next to no changes, or like one or two cards getting hit, that would be fun. Because really, the game is pretty okay right now. Actually, um, it's a pretty diverse format for one thing, right? That actually is pretty nice. It looks cool. It's good. I like this. Is this big enough? I mean, this is a shitty algorithm. Even if it is big. Oh baby, a triple. Oh, that actually fits pretty nice. Okay. Do I have more? Like, do these actually? I feel like these are bigger. Yeah, these are considered looser. So, which set? Man, I have so many just lying around for various different sizes. Well, we'll cross that bridge. But yeah, I feel like when it comes to lists where we don't get any changes or we have very few changes, people get a little bit upset. But the thing is, if we aren't getting that many changes and the meta is actually pretty okay, what would need to be changed? Or like even in the case of where we don't have events, if we don't have events, then what needs to be changed? You know? And I know a lot of like discussion behind ban lists can be driven by how you feel about something, and I'm definitely not going to tell people that they don't have the right to dislike how something is set up or whatever. But I still would like to impress it. It's important to take a step back and think, you know, is this card actually that bad of a problem, or do I just have bad matchups with it because of the deck I'm using? I mean, excuse me. And I may personally go into that mindset a lot because and I mean in the mindset of thinking like, is my deck specifically just really bad against whatever? Because I think I've always play tested like damn near everything that comes out in this game, at the very least to understand it. So if I end up going up against it, I'm not like a deer in the headlights, as it were, right? And it's definitely helped, but I think my doing that also has led to me evaluating hard bounds a bit differently than I might have otherwise. And that is not to say that other people don't do the same thing. You know, it's just I'm just trying to speak to my experience so far. I'm just trying to speak to my experience so far. I just realized that my microphone was turned away from me. But oh wow, that was a little bit difficult. Oh man, where was I gonna go with this? Oh yeah, because like there are definitely cards that are quite strong and like very impactful. But just because something's strong and impactful doesn't necessarily mean it's problematic, right? Just because something is a very effective tool at dealing with a particular situation doesn't mean it's yeah, doesn't mean it's bad to have in the game or that it's overtuned or anything like that. Well, since this is like literally the only, well, actually, we'll have to see. I feel like it's gonna be the only sleeve because I don't think any of the ones I have right here are the same fit. Like everything, all of these are way too big. And that's why I have been using them the way I have. Hmm. Yeah, I don't think I have any that are that small. The only ones that might be are here, but I doubt they are. So, yeah, no, all of these are big. Oh, okay. Well, at least that tells me what I need to do. I need to order more of a slightly smaller size, of course, to use as outers. I think they call these penny sleeves or whatever, but for extra deck, they're fine. If it decent enough, could be a little longer. I am trying very hard not to sneeze. I don't think that's gonna last that long. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, it's like I think I've tried to take, and I think a lot of people do this, but I try to take the stance that okay, my deck is weak to this, but I'm not just thinking about that in terms of my deck, right? I'm just like, okay, so if my deck is weak to this particular card, how many decks are weak to this? How impactful is this card? Is this something that's searchable potentially? I mean, damn near anything is searchable thanks to Small World now, but it's not in the TCG quite yet. And I don't think like every single deck is gonna necessarily want to run it because it's like in some capacity it's a build around, right? But like I was fucking around with running Gizmex, right? Even before that card was revealed or anything like that. And man, I keep almost sneezing. But yeah, I was fucking around with Gizmex even before that card was revealed. And when I saw it, one of the first things I thought was, oh, like this literally just like helps enable Orochi or turns on the fucking dog, which we can look at because I just so happen to have a bunch of Gizmex right here. Dog has a pretty nice effect. It can recycle your banished face down step back into the deck. It's pretty cool. So, I will likely never summon this goddamn thing. I don't even remember if Jack ever played this. It's been so long since I've watched 5Ds. I should do another go through. How many cards is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Didn't even need all of them. Didn't even need all of them. At least even with 5, so I could like sleeve something up to send somebody and another ride deck, which is okay with me. That is okay with me. You go right there. Okay. So this will put in here. Since I usually use them together, but had them separated. Yeah, I will definitely go back to the Popper, back to this one. I have such an issue remembering Gizmek names because I initially memorized their original ones, and while the English ones I think are decent, I just I'll get different parts of their names fucked up, so it'll take me a while. But yeah, this guy, when 600 cards advantage, what the fuck is that? That is not. That was not in my list. Okay, that's weird. All right, so this one says while 600 cards advantage, you can also miss fire without distributing, which is pretty nice in Gizmex. For it works with the bird, right? Bird lets you do some cool stuff, but it also potentially can let you combo with other things and then playing around with business in that regard. But yeah, you can also move on trigger them, and then you can discard one monster to add one monster's attack equals its defense from your deck, except for Makami, right? And then if this card in the monster zone is destroyed, it doesn't matter if your opponent destroys it or if you destroy it. So you can actually do certain stuff with like the what do you call them? Mechaloids. Go into a Roshi or something, pull this out, pop this, summon something out of your hand, shuffle some shit back, whatever. I mean, I've done it before, but I don't. It's been a while since I tried that list, so I don't really remember exactly how that went. But it's a pretty nice interaction. You can use like Pot of Prosperity into actually. Yeah, you can use Pot of Prosperity into Small World, I think, because if I'm not misremembering, Prosperity only prevents you from drawing a card. It doesn't prevent you from searching things out. Let's see. Pot of Prosperity. Yeah, you cannot draw cards by card effects the turn you activate this card. So, since that's not drawing, that works. But yeah. Most of these can go back. I genuinely do not remember what the fuck I won with these. Okay, now that is squared away. Is there anything else that I need to do in this general area? I suppose not. That's about stuff. Alright, someone randomly just woke me up and was like, hey, here's a Pokemon pack one day, and it came with these and then Urshifu, which I seem to have misplaced. Oh, no, I didn't misplace it. It's in here. That is not said Urshifu. It is. Oh, maybe I did misplace it. What the fuck? That's sad. Where did you go? That's not it. I wonder what I did with it. I know I sleeved it and I put it away, but I if it's not in here, the only other thing I would think of putting it in is maybe the related it. Is that what I did? I don't think so. Yeah, no, I didn't. Huh. Interesting. Wait, that is definitely not it. Is it in this mangle of things? No, it is not. But there's more stuff there. Oh no! But yeah, I guess while I am looking like a buffoon, I can continue talking a little bit about. Wow, I have a lot more of these than I thought I did. Oh, actually, I don't know if I'll put it in the box. It'd be weird to be in here, but not. It's not there. Receipts. Uh, Alright, well, anyway, so in regards to ban list shenanigans and whatever the fuck else it was I was talking about, what the hell? Um, I don't know, it just feels like oftentimes enough, really bad card interactions are the main things that aren't handled. And I don't know if it's a good thing that they go so far under the radar because people don't think about them. But it's like when Gem Knight Fusion was revealed, I am absolutely sure that there are many people that immediately caught on to how good it was going to be because you had access to Seraphonite, is her name, right? The extra normal summon. And you could pretty much run her in any deck because Brilliant Fusion, I believe, was somewhat searchable or something like that. And, oh man, the sinuses are doing a doozy on my head. Yeah, this feels bad. Um, Momento de sinuses. Why do I just have a? Oh no, it's not just one. I have two sleeves. They're just decent. Weird. Anyway, oops. Fuck, what was I saying? Ah, man. I hate allergies. It's not fair. Nope, that's just inside. And this is, oh, that's where I put it. I put it with Orphist for some reason. Oh, right. Orphist. Orphist. Live by the crit, die by the crit. I guess this is okay. Just mail and organizational things today. So can I recall what I was talking about? Yes, no, maybe. So I think a lot of people caught on to the Seraphonite thing, but I do recall when I brought it up to the people that I spoke to, who were very into the game at the time. For some reason, they were like, "Oh no, you can't do that. That's not that good." And I just wonder if it's a similar situation where, like, some combos are definitely going to be really, really fucking obvious, and they were probably obvious to more people than they weren't. But where the general player perception is what ends up dictating what needs to get hit. Because, like, I think there are definitely going to be situations where the company will balance cards in a certain way, or like with a certain idea of how they're going to be used, and then of course it's going to go completely off the rails because we exist, which is fine. They just need to adapt to it in some capacity. Um, but what are they supposed to adapt to if they don't even like if we don't figure it out, right? Or we don't figure it out until we have to figure it out. Which I mean, like in-house playtesting is something that I think is very valuable. But I've been told by people for fucking decades that Magic the Gathering has in-house testing, and yet Magic, from my perspective, like even before I got into the game at all, seemed to have some of the goofiest fucking balance I've ever seen. So I don't know what to believe. I do not know what to believe. Okay, so these things can go back into these things. Oh, and I think I spoke before about like accessibility to card games, so I'm gonna get to that in a moment. So I probably shouldn't have put any of my decks up. So we'll have to go through those in a bit because I'm going to use that as a little bit of an example. This is right. Unfortunately, I don't think I can actually show off most of the overdress decks because some of the upgrades that I have gotten for them uh, are not currently in my possession. Uh, I guess we'll have to look through that too, actually. So what do I do with these for now? I guess I'll just set them right there. All right, I guess just to quickly reiterate, since I kept forcing myself to lose my own train of thought, when it comes to ban lists, I think that oftentimes discussion ends up being dominated by opinions, right? Because we know what we interact with for one thing, and we know what's difficult for our decks, and consequently, sometimes things that are problematic for us specifically will seem much more overbearing than they actually are. And then also, it's because like sometimes various things in conjunction with each other are a problem, even if they would be fine alone. It's like the other day, I believe it was very clearly explained that Wonder Elzel's second ability actually is the problem, not the Percival and Gurgit interaction. Because even if you don't have them interacting, what still exists that is causing problems as far as the overall setup for Paladin is concerned, and it comes down to Wonder Ezel. And if you remove Wonder Ezel from the equation, there's a lot of stuff that wouldn't be excessive, I guess I'll say. Or at least that's how I understood it. I could have been misunderstanding where they were going with it, but it seemed relatively straightforward. And I mean, Wonder Ezel's skill makes sense. I mean, Wonder Ezel's second skill being the problem makes sense because like you have all these cards that activate when they are called by an ability, and that's calling them by an ability. So you know. But anyway, also like the choice restriction thing, I think is just very very good. It cuts down on how to say it cuts down on excessive excessively powerful combos, right? While also allowing various different decks to exist regardless of their viability, right? And I think that that in and of itself just kind of promotes a variety in deck building and whatnot. But also, once again, I do think that when it comes to ban lists and whatnot, that often enough, people also forget that ban lists are there to a degree to push product. And that's just like it's relevant because they're not gonna like it doesn't matter which company it is, right? But unless something is legitimately like tier zero broken, I don't think they're going to ban like whatever really, unless it's that bad. Like I mean, we still have help after all this time, and the format's power is relatively okay, so should be fine. But you know, it depends. These are going to someone. Um, Was there anything else? Yeah, just I wish quite a few panelists would I mean games would explore the idea of doing choice restrictions with their ban list. And I mean even with Yu-Gi-Oh, one of the biggest counter arguments I should say for the Nightingale example that I gave earlier was, oh well, if more cards come out, then you have to do a choice restriction for another card. I'm just like, hey, if Nightingale already has a list of cards that she's choice restricted with, right? You just slap that other card onto the Nightingale side of the choice restriction. Either you can run both of them, either of them, whatever the fuck, or any of the stuff on the other side of the list. So it's like, okay, I have Mastermon on this side and I have Cerberusmon on this side. Can't run them together. some other card comes out, whatever the fuck it is, has a similar interaction, but not necessarily the same interaction. Okay, well, now you have two cards in this list. You could run either of these cards separately or together. They don't even necessarily, in case Digimon, need to be the same color, but neither of them could be run with this. And that's it. Or like anything that's in this list. That's simple. But I guess on that note, Mastermon somehow just ended up being one of my favorite Digimon, as well as really liking Mirai's character from Cyber Sleuth. So I picked these up. Right after I ordered them, it was announced that there would be a Mastermind starter deck, which we did get the reveal of the starter deck version of Mastermind, and I'm very interested. And I'm also pretty happy with this purchase because this was just kind of like a preliminary purchase that I got. So we got the, might be hard to see depending on how I set this up, but we got 4 Cerberusmon, 4 Werewolf mode, right? These are just some things I picked up, not even like a full deck, so it's not or anything like that. I bought 8 of these for some reason. But we got 4 Gabumon, 4 Kyrie, 4 Jackraid, because I do have a like particular idea of how I will be running the deck one way or the other. Of course, that could change as the starter deck reveals continue, and we'll just have to see what they hold in store for us. I guess I'll just leave these up too because I have an access or standard size sleeves right now. Oh, these are even bigger than standard size, but that's okay. Yeah, just to close out the ban list stuff since I keep going there and keep rambling and whatnot. For Yu-Gi-Oh specifically, if like I would legitimately think everything is okay if they just fucking ban IO. I don't know what is with I don't know what is with Yu-Gi-Oh in keeping floodgates unbanned for so long because like at least with the Secret Village of Spellcasters, that can legitimately backfire on you, and I've had it backfire on me a decent amount. Like during Striker format, it was cool because okay, you can shut off Striker basically. Like they don't run spellcasters or like not talking about it. If they are, it's something in their extra deck, and they have to potentially jump through some hoops to get into it, right? So them turning back on their spells without doing that is unlikely, and them doing that is unlikely unless they already have a setup for it because no access to spells when that's most of their deck, right? And then, yet no, I come up against other decks, and I could put the field spell down turn 1 for sure, but I don't necessarily want to do that because I could end up under, I say under, I could end up going against something like Endymion, right? Endymion, aside from being spellcasters, probably clear my board in a single turn. So if they're going second, honestly, to a degree, no matter what resources, what defenses I have, they might be able to go right through them. And if they do, I would find it difficult to recover because I put something on the board that restricts me from using spell card effects unless I have a spellcaster. And if they can remove my spellcaster, well, I'm just up a creek without a paddle. But like that's why I feel like Village is okay. It's not something that's just easy to splash in and is gonna get run ridiculously. Its counterplay is pretty fucked up, but it's it's not as like ever present as it's just not as ever present as something like that. Why is this one sleeve? These sleeves are not cut evenly. That's pretty bad. Now I have Wonder Ezra stuck in my head for some reason. God damn it. Oh man, yeah, just I don't know. Bandless stuff overall is just like there's a myriad of factors to it, but I still do like I think MBT's tournaments are fucking funny, but like legitimately the only reason I watch them is because I think they're hilarious. But I do agree with the notion that there's probably a bunch of shit that can come off a ban list, not even necessarily just Yu-Gi-Oh's, but like a lot of different ban lists, and nothing will fucking change because like one thing that a lot of people I think overlook, new and old, is that Yu-Gi-Oh's power level, like going with Yu-Gi-Oh specifically now, Yu-Gi-Oh's power level has shifted over the years. And even though, yeah, this format now is considerably more powerful on the whole than something like GOATS maybe, right? It's not really like this format is actually considerably weaker than quite a few of the ones we've interacted with in the recent past. Well, where the fuck can this fit? I feel like it won't, but maybe it will. Oh wow, it actually can. I don't really want to do that, but that is very informative. Uh, I do have a couple of other places to store these, but I guess I'll just put it with the Sanctuary Guard. I'm going to talk about this stuff in a moment anyway, so we can see this right here. Okay, so one more goddamn time. When it comes to ban list, I think one of the main things that people overlook is that there is definitely a marketing aspect to it. So of course there are going to be certain cards that are just straight up not going to get banned unless it's been a decent amount of time since they've been released. The only exception to this is if like it is an emergency situation and you really need a ban. Now, even then, I think bans could be avoided in at least Yu-Gi-Oh! And a couple of other games, perhaps, if choice restrictions were a thing. And I'm honestly surprised that I don't see it that much in online games because that's probably the easiest place to do choice restrictions. At least I would think so. Yeah. Uh, yeah. It's not about what I want, though, in those cases, of course, you know. And of course, like, sometimes things are just not going to necessarily work out because, again, the player base will see things that the company won't necessarily see when they are designing and balancing cards. And if we aren't the ones bringing it to their attention, then something can crop up on us. Of course, there are those who will try to keep their discoveries quiet because, hey, if they're banning this other shit and I know that something else is broken, I want to play that broken shit, you know? That's just how it is. It's how the cookie crumbles, as they say. Uh, I need to get regular Dragonic Vanquishers. I would like to play that deck. Brown one looks so nice. It's really dumb. I'm glad they're doing the Grade 3 Searcher reprints. And it's really dumb of me to say this, but like she has the like RE down here for her rarity, and it's probably hard to see, but I'm hoping that it'll like the reprint will allow me to get 3 more of this specific rarity, even though it's literally just a triple rare, just because I want to have 4 copies with the same thing on it. For whenever I can play witches, really do hope that the upcoming set of clan collection, we know half of the clans are going to be reversed and the other half aren't. Shadow Paladin is getting Raging Form. I really hope the set, like, it's getting Raging Form as a reverse unit since Shadow's never had a reverse before. And I really hope the set after that gives more witch stuff because trying to use just other Shadow Paladin stuff in V is uh, there's not a whole lot you can do other than like Bindy's Superior Ride, and I don't want to do that. Okay, what is this? Extra shadow stuff, extra gold, and royal. These aren't extra, I just don't remember what these are. Ah, right, Nightmare Painter and Witch of Iron Chains. I'm not sure why I got these. Like, I don't feel like this is necessarily as strong as I would like. But then again, she probably would be good against Excel clans because if they just left rears out, they couldn't intercept. And I think I wanted the recursion of Nightmare Painter and just picked up 4 because I wasn't sure how many I would actually end up running in the end. Oh, this is literally a Blau deck, but missing the grade 3 Searcher. So I'll sleeve that up once I get the grade 3 Searcher, and I have the same thing going on with Battle Sisters here. Friend sent me an SP of Arches, so now I have to purchase 3 copies of this. Hopefully I do that before they spike any further, because they are, well, I say spike, but like they've been sitting around $20, $25 for a while now. I don't know which Keter deck I'm going to end up putting them in, but I really like SP Arches. It would probably be easier to show this if I had more natural light, but yeah, that effect is actually pretty cool. I do think the foiling on the, oh god, that actually hurt my eye to look at. I do think the foiling on the Japanese version of it is a little bit cooler. It has like the hexagons and stuff on it, but it's not a big deal. It's not okay. Rambling aside, so something I can talk about a little bit more cohesively probably is accessibility. So I already showed this. Um, I would say one of Yu-Gi-Oh's biggest problems right now is that it's just not accessible from a price standpoint. The overall power level of the game right now is actually okay. The balance is fine for the most part, but it's like a deck like. So let me actually pull out one of my decks. Excuse me. Okay, so this is not like the exact build that I want to be using right now, but or at least I don't think it is. I think I'm missing something. So this is not exactly a sideboard, but these extra cards. We are going to be looking at Witchcrafters. So I hope I didn't shuffle this. Okay, I didn't. We got 3 Personas. We got a left hand orphan, a right hand, a re-stage, a re-spell chronicle, 3 foolish very. I know one of my online builds only ran 2, so that's probably why. Re-unveiling, I know some people run 2 of this. 3 holiday, 3 creation, uh, one collaboration, one draping, one scroll, one buy street. I do have two. I think I have two more copies of each of those. Two Genie, Genai, I'm not sure. One Pottery, three Tor, three Schmitter, one Edel. I know a lot of people don't run this, but this card is actually really, really good. One Hein, one Veray, one Aruru. And then in terms of extra cards, I do have another copy of Hein. Actually, it shouldn't. Well, I believe this is a 40 card deck, but I do have another copy of Hein. I have a copy of Masterpiece. I just had these because I've had them for forever, pretty much, and I just like having them here. But yeah, I have two strikes, and I just need more. I need more blue sleeves so I can have an actual side deck because I do want the side bills for various reasons. And then I just have the rest of the copies of Pottery. I only ever got two of her just because I didn't. Oh no, I did get two. Well, I got three, but I don't know why because I don't think I'll ever run more than two. Even if I were to run this at a heavier uh, card count. And all my cards are the original printing. So yeah, I have another Bifrost and this Scroll. I have another Masterpiece. Well, except for this. So Masterpiece was originally in Infinity Chasers a Super, and it got reprinted as a Ultra in the tens from last year, I believe. Um, I got three Genie. This Edel is Infinity Chasers, but the one I have in my deck is a different printing because she's a secret. Yeah, this is also from the same set as this. Both of the Hines that are sleeved are also secrets. You know what? I'm just gonna do that. I'll just do this. Alright. Because the original was a super. Um, I did get a reprint of Ray because I couldn't find a regular version of her, or like the original print for I got four from my locals, right? So let's see. Yeah, Infinity Chasers. These two Edel are the 10 pack because they came in secret rather than super. Uh, I think I already bumped everything I could in this deck, and draping and collaboration are both. Like yeah, the rest of this is all Infinity Chasers. Unless they came out a later set, like Unveiling Pain from Eternity Code, I believe. Uh, Spellconquer doesn't have a high rate. There are some stuff that I would definitely swap the restages out for, but we do not currently have a reprint for those cards, and I'm not going to spend like fucking I don't know, 15, 120 on some shit that I play casually. And I would like to play it more than casually, but it's really just not there. So anyway, using this deck as an example, most of these cards came out in Infinite Chasers. And the thing is, back when this deck dropped, creations were like 25 apiece. I think they were actually 27, and it took them a while to drop down to 25. It took them even longer to drop down to 19. And I didn't buy mine until the reprints that came with, you know, Hein, Edel, so on and so forth, in higher rarity, because I refused to pay over $10 for these. And it's like this is a key component for this deck. This is a very important card for this deck. So I just was playing this deck very underpowered for quite some time. And the reason I did that is I knew this deck wasn't that good. Like, no matter how hard I tried, even though I could beat Orcus and stuff, because this was very much prior to Patronus, um, it was by no means consistent. It was a very much, not only was it an uphill battle, but I had to open kind of specifically for their board to really be able to do anything, and I had to be able to, in some cases, rely on them not knowing what these cards did. Like people just trying to fucking pop my shit without realizing that, oh hey, Buy Street's gonna stop that. There were so many games I won simply because like I'll put Buy Street down and they would try to pop something and I'd be like, well, Buy Street protects that like everything once, like all of my witchcraft and monsters once each, I believe, right? Because it's like a Seafood effect, if I'm not. Yeah, because it's like the first time each witchcraft or monster control be destroyed each turn by battle card effect is not destroyed. Yeah, so like it wasn't like they didn't know what the card did. They were informed of it, and yet they still just tried popping my shit. And I was just really confused because a lot of the time, whatever it was they were trying to pop Hooray with was like something they could have like just hit any card with, so they could have hit Bio Street. So I was like, what are you doing? You know? But that's beside the point. So this is from a deck build pack, right? And fuck my wrist. If you were to try to get any theme from a deck build pack, you'll likely go through a similar circumstance where you can have a theme, and this one is actually like it's pretty okay. It's still just not something that you're really going to be getting a lot of mileage out of in a meta context. Um, this deck at launch basically cost $90 plus just because this searcher was 27 bucks, right? And it did have a lot of hype around it and whatnot, so I like people just wanted to play it. So I understand the pricing, right? I'm not really complaining about that. But the problem is, if you are a new person trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh and one of the deck build packs drops and you want a theme out of it, you are still going to be paying out of the ass, even if most of the rest of the deck is cheap, because one particularly important secret card is going to run you like $30 a piece. You're gonna be spending $90 on a playset of one card, and that's not even getting to the extra deck. Or like the holidays, I think I paid. No, holidays were like 7 each for a while, I think, but I only ended up paying 3 for mine for some reason. I think I must have got somebody that listed low, like while I was editing my card or some shit and re-optimizing. So I lucked out, you know. But in a similar circumstance, that's going to be 90 for one for a playset of one card, and then another 30 for a playset of another card. So that's $120 to play a deck that, at least for me, I knew wasn't that good. And you're somebody who's just getting into the game, and you might want to pick up a deck that's honestly also not like meta level. It's decent. You can probably get some rogue success with it. You can probably go to locals and do perfectly fine with it. Might not top every single time, but do okay depending on how big your locals is. And you are at least going to be paying 150 for something like this, which is just kind of depressing. And it's like this is without even considering your extra deck, right? There's a lot of useful extra deck cards that you might not necessarily go into with Witchcrafter because you don't tend to have a whole lot of things on board, honestly. But there are some certain things where you can. And it's just like an extra deck can legit cost you $20 per card in your extra deck. And there's 15 cards there, so that's $300. So I'm paying 520. I mean, not 520. I'm paying 420. Oh, that was entirely unintentional. I'm paying 420 bucks, 450 bucks, something around there, to get into a game, right? Which is crazy. And it's not necessarily always going to be like that. There are definitely cheaper alternatives, but you have to still kind of evaluate what you're doing and know what you're getting into because those cheaper alternatives, um, sometimes they actually do serve legitimately the same purpose for your deck, but it might not always be that case. And sometimes you'll find out that there are cheaper cards that actually perform better than commonly used meta options, but again, you have to figure that out for yourself. It's just like it's really, really crazy how much it can cost to get into Yu-Gi-Oh when you're starting off. The nice thing though is a lot of the time when it comes to the extra deck, a lot of the extra deck stuff being generic, like a lot of the better extra deck stuff being generic means it's a one-time investment, right? So even if you're paying $200 now for a whole extra deck of stuff, that's stuff that you can still use down the line. So like if I wanted to pick up vampires today and I already had an access code talker, if I came to find that hey, there's a circumstance or a couple of circumstances where access code is actually something I want to go into, I could just use it there. So I'm still continuing to get value out of what was probably a $75 to $120 purchase. Or like I don't feel like getting it, but I have the first legendary duelist. I mean not legendary duelist, but the first legendary dex set, and like I see that box itself, like the box itself, go for upwards of 100, partially because it just contains a couple of really good or really decent cards, and some of the cards that are in the set will go for a pretty penny as well. So that's a thing. I remember I did not want to get rid of this, but because of Zeus, the price of this actually shot up, and I had people offering me like $50 for it. And this is the crazy thing. I bought a set of Dragons of Legend, the original one that Soul Charge came in, and I pulled 3 Soul Charge, which were pretty decent at that time, right? And I ended up getting this for a Soul Charge from a friend. And it's just crazy, like how many times I just wanted this card because I like the art and stuff. Ultimate Magician, they're related, as friends and whatever, and there's a couple of cards showing this. But this one routinely just spikes to absurd prices. Absurd in my opinion because it's not like hundreds of dollars or anything like that. Like the most I've seen it go up to, like on TG Player, was I think 35 at one point. But when people are rushing to get stuff for an event or they don't want to deal with the online, they'll offer more if they realize you have something without you even like really mentioning it. It's just this game is absurd. Like even on a casual level, it can cost so much to get into it, and it's really unfortunate because like for a while we had really good structure decks. So you could pick up 3 7 great structure decks, and there were a couple of things that you definitely would want from a set that I think was released either directly before or directly after that structure deck came out. But it wasn't that bad. Like you could effectively get a decent deck, I want to say, for like $100 or less. And if you really just didn't want to fucking upgrade it at all, you pay $30 plus tax for the 3 starter decks, and you're good to go, more or less, right? Emphasis on more or less. So overall, Witchcrafter cost me, I want to say, because I was a little bit careful about what I was getting, how much I was spending. Witchcrafter cost me, I think, about 110, right? And that's without an extra deck because I don't really go into extra deck stuff. But at the same time, I already own a lot of generic extra deck stuff, so it's not a problem for me. But if I didn't, that would have been upwards of another at least like because you could run some of the pots, right, that banish stuff in your extra deck because you don't really care about what's in your extra deck, but there might be a couple of cards you want to use, right? So even if it was only 5 cards, that could have cost me 80 right there, I think. At least for the ones I'm thinking of collectively at the time that I bought them anyway. Uh, but yeah, it's like overall, yeah. If I include extra deck stuff, that would have been like 200, and then if I would have included pots probably would have ran it up by like another 225. So I would have been paying $400 for a deck that's like okay, but at the same time I spent like I don't know 700. I'm trying to think of the exact value because I've bought a lot of supplies as well since then. But yeah, so I have all of the Overdraft starter decks. They are where my arm is reaching right now. Um, Even though I haven't like built them all, I have ordered upgrades for them and they've been relatively cheap, right? So it's like I paid $25 to get all the starter decks, and then the upgrades that I've gotten for all of them, like Marina Arcs, I got 4 copies for $6. Um, a lot of the stuff for Stoichia is just really, really cheap. So Magnolia didn't really cost much of anything. I would say like $10 maybe. Um, Bruce was expensive at the onset, and I was focused on building Orphis rather. So I didn't really upgrade Bruce. Bruce is interesting because it keeps getting such strong cards that I think it has some build diversity, but then there's like not much reason to actually go into the build diversity. So Bruce is kind of just sitting there for me right now. There are like obvious options that I'll get, like Marjorie probably, and actually I'm not too sure what I'll get aside from her. Now that I think about it, Marjorie and Helldive, I guess, but aside from that, I'm not too sure. And Snow is actually going to be a little bit expensive, but it's to be expected when it's like the third best deck right now. Excuse me, and also because it's I was really trying not to sneeze, and also because it's full of girls, right? But I want to say, yeah, the upgrades I've gotten for that so far, like for all of those decks so far, have only run me into, I want to say, the $80 range. And like luckily, what it seems like Busher like set out to do was to make a very accessible and affordable format. Is very much the case. So upgrading them isn't going to be the most expensive thing. But on top of that, I got so you saw me put together Valios, which is right here, right? So Valios actually cost me like legitimately $30. Um, Messiah here cost me 50 something because where is it? Why am I Messiah so close? What the fuck? Oh, well, I decided to get SP Volcos. There were some places selling them for 40, but I managed to get four for like $6 a piece. So Vocal is honestly the main reason I want to play this deck. I was just like, oh, hey, he's cool. And then I was like, oh, wait, you can't ride him. How the fuck do you use this? Oh, you got to play Messiah, dude. So I was like, okay, okay. So like this is 30. This let's say this was like 55 or 60. Let's go with 60. So this is $90. Got Ryu here. Uh, where's she at though? Where is she at though? Okay. Yeah, yeah. Those are extra cards. Okay, so the Black Scissors Lady herself. This cost me 70, but this cost me 70 because I got lucky. I bought a box of Divine Lightning Radiance and I pulled the vast majority of the higher rarity cards I needed. Only one got radio, but like a lot of the other stuff. So when I needed to order stuff, the rest of the deck ended up costing me $35 as well. So that's 90, 70 pulls us up to 100. And man, why do I feel like I'm gonna sneeze? Pulls up to 160, right? So then we have Orphis. Orphis overall, I think cost me. Let me see. It cost me 60 to build it initially. No, no, no. It cost me 70 to build it initially, but then I upgraded by getting those two, these four. I swapped out my hollow. I mean my hollow, my regular, and the darkest nobody knows for two hollow ones. I haven't upgraded these to hollow yet because they're four piece. I have four of these, but I only want one currently. Um, but yeah, I also have the Algebirds and the Amberinos. I did not get them over triggered, even though I probably should. It's probably one of the strongest over triggers. So yeah, like after upgrades, because they were pretty cheap. I think they were like $3 a piece almost. So this is another 100. Oops. So that's at 260. Highlander cost me like $50 to make, but it went up to 100 purely because I got a Japanese copy of Laura. If I can locate her, yeah. So I wanted an English one, I was gonna get the lower rarity one, but for some reason the low rarity one was $50, and I was like, if I'm gonna be paying $50 for a fucking card like this, I might as well get one that actually like has the crazier rarity, since the Japanese version is literally the same price. So 100 because I splurged on a single card, but you know, uh, that puts us at what? 30, 90, 260. I mean 160, 260, 360. And then this is Sanctuary Guard, which ran me. Whoa, that was a mistake. Sanctuary Guard set, which was 20. Excuse me. And a Jewel Knight split, which was like $30. It was actually a little bit less than that, but like shipping. So 360, 260, 360, 410. I feel like I'm going to sneeze again. And the deck that I actually bought first was Silverthorn, which is right here. And this actually cost me like an even 60, I think, 50 or 60. Yeah, it was 50. It was 50. So that puts us at 460. And then like this was $12, this was 20. No, this was 12, this was 14. So that'll just put us up to damn, why do I have to keep playing? Let's just say 460 plus 25, that puts us at 485, right? Then I bought both of the Monster Strike start decks. Well, not in order, but I bought both of those, which are down there, but I just don't want to grab them right now. I can actually prove I have them though because of this thing. Power count is here. Um, so that was like, not counting shipping, that was another. Well, actually, you know, with shipping and everything, those plus the Orphis sleeves and my black and white blackout sleeves ended up running me like another 80. So that was like what, 560. And then the Battle Sisters that I just am, and like both the Battle Sisters and the Blouse that I'm just waiting on getting the Grade 3 Searcher. And I think I actually do need two more copies of Kick Kit. So I'm probably just gonna wait to get those when the Grade 3 Searcher go up. These were each like 20. Yeah, like the whole deck for both of these were pretty much just $20 a piece. So that brings us up to like 600. And then Witches I bought individually because I wasn't expecting them to be that much, and they really weren't. So I think they only ran me like 10, $15, if that, probably less. The only I don't know how to say this. Like the only issues are like, aside from Battle Sisters and Blouse, are. Oh, and then we go up to 650 because I bought what was it? I built Mega Colony machining for a friend of mine, and that actually cost almost as much as Gabriel. And it's kind of funny because I didn't even fully like get SVRs for him. I only got one ditch because I was like, he wasn't into the game at all. It's just I knew he would like the designs, so I was like, okay, I'll just send him some cards that he'll probably think is cool. But I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'll just build him a deck. And I figured if I had like a variety of the different rarities and stuff in there, that he might take to it more. Like not even like to get into the game, but just like he might appreciate the variants and stuff more. But he ended up like actually wanting to, so that was awesome. But yeah, I didn't even fully bring out his deck, and that ended up costing me $65 some type of way. So like, not that that's a problem. It's just so I've legitimately spent like fucking a little bit over 700. I thought it was actually close to 800. I spent a little bit over 700 bucks on all this stuff. Granted, I am missing grade 3 searchers for Messiah also because when I was building that, she was $20. She has since dropped, but I figured I might as well wait till reprints to just get all my stuff at once because some of them are not all in stock at like a single store. So I hope like once the clan stuff comes out, I can just get like all the great ones that I want to get. We're also getting a promo for Messiah printed for the first time in English in that set, so I need to get that as well. There's just like a couple of things I want to pick up, so I figured I might as well do it all at once. But yeah, like for $750, I got 3 decks and half of a deck, which are all in here, right? And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 5 more decks that I've upgraded a bit, and then a Monster Strike decks, which I haven't upgraded at all, just because. Actually, why didn't I upgrade them? Oh, right, because the hurricane struck, and I was a little bit concerned. So I'll probably get around to doing that. But still, it's like what, two, four, wait, 2, 4, 6 plus 3. Yeah, it's like still, even if I ignore the overdress decks, like aside from Orphis, which is right here, of course, I still built like over 10 decks for like 700 bucks, which is including some of the supplies that I got in the process. So like the sleeves, the 2 deck box, well, these 2 deck boxes, but I actually also did buy like a pack of deck boxes for this week because I just needed them. Like it's just crazy to me because I mean Vanguard is definitely cheaper than Yu-Gi-Oh. Like it's always been cheaper than Yu-Gi-Oh. But it's I guess what's so absurd about it to me is the fact that like Magic is actually cheaper to get into as a beginner than Yu-Gi-Oh because you could go pick up like one of the commander deck things that they have going on, and it's actually a good deal. You legitimately are getting a good product for the money that you're spending. So you end up in a situation where, oh man, sorry, just sinuses. You end up in a situation where, yeah, okay, it might be pretty expensive to play competitively in Magic, regardless of which format that you're going for, but the game itself is pretty accessible because not only does it have quite a few different formats that you can try out, you know, maybe one of them works for you, maybe one of them doesn't. But you also, oh wait, why did I put Delios up there? I actually want to use that later. Uh, um, yeah, like so. Not only do you have access to a couple of different formats in case you don't particularly take a shine to any given format, you also do have cheap options to play competitively if you want to go competitive, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like, I've seen some Magic formats where you can get a competitive deck for like 100, 150 bucks. It might not necessarily be the craziest thing, it might not necessarily be the best deck, right? But you do get something that's competitively viable for what I would honestly, in comparison to Yu-Gi-Oh, at least say isn't that much money. And even like with Weiss has a decent investment that's necessary to get into the game, kind of. Like, if, like, all you really need is, like, oh, okay, the Hololive set came out, and maybe you just want to play Hololive stuff, so you're going to play for either a split of a particular subset that's, like, supposed to work together, or maybe you're just going to get, like, a playset split thing of, like, the whole thing. Just get like 4 of every card so that going into the future, the only other time that you would have to get more cards would be to get like more play sets from a subsequent Hololive set. I really do hate allergies. But anyway, like you basically would it like like holy shit, why am I having so much difficulty and I'm stuttering? With Weiss, it's a situation where it's like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Extra deck, but it's your whole deck. You spend 200 bucks or whatever to get playsets of all these cards, right? But then you don't really have to do that again until something else that you're interested in drops. Yeah, I mean, you don't even necessarily have to do that. You can just specifically build whatever deck it is that you want, but it's safer to get that whole split because going forward, not only does it allow you to build a bunch of different decks potentially from whatever anime or series they are having a set for, but it also means you're going to be immediately prepared for any future support that comes out by doing the same thing again later. So it's like if you're spending $200 a year, right? You're getting to play a bunch of different decks versus someone in Yu-Gi-Oh spending 400 bucks to play one just to get into the game. You know, like it's daunting regardless, but the context does make a big difference. I think. At least if you understand. Um, Digimon was pretty expensive, but I think it's pretty okay now. Like these 4 copies of these, I actually saw these really cheap. Somebody bought them before I could for like 12 bucks total. I ended up paying 24 for mine. I don't really regret it. There were 6 a piece, not like 24 a piece. But some cards are actually still pretty expensive. Like Lucimon is still 70 bucks. And I don't remember if that's because that set was. I don't remember if he's so high because that set didn't get as much in the way of sales, or if it's just because he's that rare of a card. But that's oh, thanks. But that's kind of like not too crazy of a problem. Like for the most part, you could just play Lord Nightmare without that for a hundred bucks, 110 bucks. Like a lot of the meta decks in Digimon right now, you could build for 100 bucks, sometimes less. I guess aside from Diaboromon, because Diaboromon, if it counts as meta, some of its better cards are promos, and that just means it's a little harder to get them. Though they have, I believe, acknowledged the promo situation, so I think like they're trying to make them accessible via tournament packs and stuff. But you know, yeah, I killed enough time and I rambled on a bit. But it's just like the Yu-Gi-Oh thing came up because I remember some people talking about like balance stuff and whatnot over I want to say the past 3 months, and it's like every time I get pulled into the conversation, regardless of what I'm saying, for some reason it goes to either accessibility or what's the other thing? Why am I having a hard time remembering? I literally just had it in my head. Oh yeah, it goes to either accessibility or power level, and sometimes it's equated. Like the other day, this guy was saying that um, he thought, like, and to be clear, this was just like his opinion of somebody who doesn't play the main format. He kind of plays older formats and just hasn't really been keeping up with the game. He thought that the power level and the amount of solitaire was the barrier to entry or like accessibility issue with um, Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's really not that. It's really just the pricing because everything else about the game is actually pretty good or acceptable right now at worst. Um, and it's kind of interesting because it feels like the main people that like go overboard with saying that the game is awful and whatnot haven't necessarily experienced um, what the game is actually currently like, which is an important factor because like how can you really criticize something accurately if you don't participate in it? Um, but it's like how to say. it's like I told a friend of mine. He said that Yu-Gi-Oh went too crazy with the power creep, and like I don't necessarily disagree, but the context of why he was saying it, I think, was wrong. So for anybody who's been watching any progression series, um, you'll notice that the game has had similar, like, quote unquote issues for the entirety of his existence. Like, genuinely, just certain cards being way too fucking strong, or floodgates doing way too much, overreaching, just being really, really excessive, and being able to shut the game down on their own. And oftentimes, not even because, like, it's not even a question of like, oh, can your opponent play around it? It just, in the case of IO just prevents them from using spells. So it's like it's just removing interaction from the game. It becomes a question not of like, it's no longer a question of whether or not you can outplay your opponent or like do better with resources, right? It becomes a question of if they can play at all. And Yu-Gi-Oh has had this problem like from the onset. Like Yu-Gi-Oh is actually a very interactive game, I think. But consequently, your main aim with this game is going to be removing as much interaction as possible. So a lot of the problem cards in this game are just things you cannot interact with or prevent interaction. Um, Again, the most egregious being stuff like Imperial Order or Royal Oppression, because you can just get to a point where you have a very solid or stable game state, I mean, board state, and then activate either of those. And if your opponent doesn't have an immediate response to them, they might be fucked. You know? That's just how it is. Like, Royal Oppression, I guess, is a little more quote unquote acceptable because either player can use it, but you end up in a situation where, okay, I have a full, like this person over here has a full field, but I'm right here and I have nothing on my board. They flip RO on me, and now I can't get anything on board because they just keep negating my shit. So unless I have enough stuff I can summon that'll make them burn away enough life points that they are considering not activating it anymore, I'm out of luck, you know? But my main point was just, if you watch a progression series, you'll realize that, like, looking at the formats, we've had similarly toxic and, as people would say, degenerate formats throughout the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, right? And we've also had instances of quite a few different decks being, um, what's the word, viable. This is how you know my allergies are getting to me. But yeah, we've had quite a few instances of a variety of decks being viable, and it's almost like we keep going through like a loop of sorts in terms of where the game stands in terms of balance. And while yes, there have been very, very powerful decks released long ahead of their time. When I say long ahead of their time, I just like they were so far ahead of the curve in terms of balance that you could have unbanned them or unrestricted whatever cards of theirs were restricted in a later era, and they would perform perfectly fine. It's like windups, if they had access to Zen Mighty, back in Pendulum era, might have been alright. Inzektor is actually really, really strong. Um, it might not be meta, but I think if they are fully unlimited, I don't know if they're fully unlimited now, actually. Let's see. There are no Inzektors on the list. So yeah, like I think the Inzektor is just like a really powerful engine that was definitely ahead of its time, but it's like a little bit more interactable nowadays, which is part of what makes it a little bit more accessible. I mean, not accessible, but like acceptable to deal with. And honestly, some of the past formats have been way more, like, way higher power level than the ones that we currently have. So I'm repeating myself, I'm rambling a bit, but it's just the game has had issues for the entirety of its existence, right? And I don't think the nature of many of those issues has changed. They were like pretty much the same. Um, but the overall environment itself also changes. Like with some of that support that the vampires got, like some of those new support cards are actually pretty good, or like I guess cards that will be coming out since I believe those were reveals. Um, I could totally see somebody picking up Vampire and running it at a rogue level because last year I was really enjoying Vampire and I actually did play test against a lot of the meta decks quite a bit. I was able to deal with Guru to a degree. Guru was very interesting. Um, it was like definitely an uphill battle of a matchup, but it was very interesting. Striker was very swingy. Like Striker definitely had the advantage in that matchup, but it was very much possible to just beat over them and stuff. It's like with Striker, the game could go nowhere for a while, but then either one of us could just kind of swing away out of nowhere, which I think would be more the case now thanks to access code, since either deck could probably go into it. What else? I think I had a bad salad matchup. Not in like when I say it had a bad salad matchup, I don't mean like it was completely crippling. You could still win, but you were definitely at a huge disadvantage. Honestly, a bigger disadvantage than the Striker. Because Striker was for the most part a fair deck with a unfair card. Yeah, my sinuses are really getting to me. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I explained myself all that well today. Probably won't do too much better anytime soon. To recap, once again, um, I think choice restrictions should be explored on ban lists that don't already do them. And even within choice restrictions, I've seen them done a couple of different ways. So, we have quite a few options. What else? Accessibility is very important, and advertisement is definitely a part of that, which I don't think I mentioned that earlier. So Konami could definitely stand to advertise some of its formats more. Like speed duels are actually pretty cool, and I really like how they do their support for it now. You just like you buy us a little mini set thing like that, and you get all the stuff. You make a deck based off of it. They really just need to promote the events more, I think. Because for people who are maybe coming from Duel Links or who just haven't played in a really long time, I think speed duels will be a great way to get into the game, if not with rush duels. But the formats just don't get enough promotion. And when it comes to Digimon, I didn't speak about this earlier because I'm just getting into Digimon, but one second. Yeah, my sinuses are killing me. I was gonna have to start with this, but Digimon's interesting. Um, I definitely need to see more, but like I'm really interested to see how they're gonna try and balance Yellow because Yellow is really strong inherently due to manipulating the security stack, and I think Mastamon as a deck might also end up being there because the new Mastamon could legitimately like Okay, well, the build of Mastermind that I want to use that utilizes the version I showed earlier, like this one, right? Um, it needs some cards that haven't come out in the West yet, but instead of just trashing cards, you filter up cards into your hand to trash them, which is why part of why I use Cerberus Mom. And it's just like the new Mastermind can put something like a Zwart defeat into your security from trash. So you could purposefully trash it because you know you're gonna put it into your security later. Your opponent's gonna have to swing into it. Or if you're running the new Mastermind and this one, let's say you go 3-3 or even 4-4, you can go into the other Mastermind, put a Zwart defeat into your security stack, right? And then call like a level 5 out because I believe that's also part of that effect, assuming that you actually DNA Digivolta or Jolgrass Evolution, right? And then, if possible, regardless if it's on that turn or a subsequent turn, you can go into this on top of the level 5 that she pulled out, or maybe a level 5 that you have in your breeding area, and hey, ping your own security and your opponent's. Putting out a Zwart defeat for free. Like, I don't, like, that's a bit of an extreme example, right? And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be viable, but if it is, I don't think purple will necessarily be at the level of yellow just because of like yellow just having so many things that recover security and stuff like that. But I mean, that would probably be a legitimately hybrid deck, so we'll have to see how that goes. And it's just like that is potentially really really strong just because of how the security mechanic works. Like part of the reason yellow is so powerful is because of its abusive game mechanics, basically. Maybe I shouldn't say it's an abuse, but how they utilize game mechanics makes them very strong in comparison to the other colors. While black, for example, is pretty underpowered by comparison, or at least on the TCG side of things, it is. It might be better in the OCG, I guess. But yeah, that's it for today. I don't know. Hmm. I don't know what I'm gonna do next time. I should probably have some things a little bit in order. Next time I want to do a mail day. We shall see what happens. Actually, yeah, let's just live the Snorlax thing.